Now is the time.
Forever? Tangent. Old.
Halt.
Hashtag always MGM.
You are approaching the unloading area.
Calm down. AK haters.
But what if it could? Behold, the
Disney
majesty of the
breeze.
Sistine Ceiling.
For the kids.
A salute to all theme parks, but mostly Walt Disney World.
Ha! What a cute ending.
Aloha and
Don't Dillo it.
This is Theme Park Thursday with Dillo's Diz. She is Jen.
Hello.
And I'm Frank, and we are here right in the middle of February.
Yes.
When this podcast drops is anyone's guess at this point, because we're just so ahead of the game for the first time in the 7-year history of this podcast.
It's very odd for us to be so ahead, but this will be like mid-March.
Mid-March.
Yes.
So we have a great guest today that we want to bring right in. But I just want to reference, if you're listening to the podcast for the first time, Jen and I, we have a lot of nostalgia for the Disney parks. And nostalgia is like our thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it sounds like we're cranky old people who don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say that as we've been doing this podcast for 7 years now, it surprises me what I am nostalgic for now that I wasn't necessarily 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things is the MagicBand, and which has developed over time, and people still use it. But when this podcast started, maybe a year before, which is 2017, a year before the podcast started, first time I finally started warming up to the idea of using the MagicBand.
Well, of course, because you're old, and it was hard for you to accept that, you can't use a ticket and you would use a MagicBand instead. Yeah.
Why is my annual pass not laminated with my photo glued on to the annual pass?
A perfect license,
That's,
so cool.
That's all I needed. So I started warming up to the MagicBand, and now we're here. It's I'm not using my phone to unlock my room.
Right.
I want the MagicBand.
Yeah. And something I did not mention, I was in Disney at the end of January. We did a trip report from that. Something I did not mention on that trip report is that the kids, I don't know how it happened. I felt a little bamboozled, but both of them ended up with MagicBand pluses on this trip. Yes. And it was interacting and it was doing all the things and they were so excited by it. And I was like, wait, how did we even get here? This wasn't the plan. This wasn't the plan. But here we are.
Yeah. And so I have nostalgia for the MagicBands now and the capabilities. And we have been talking a lot about the evolution of that over the years. But recently, Jen and I have been interacting a lot more on the LinkedIn. And Jen started interacting with today's guest. Jen, if you just want to mention briefly.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I probably will say this for a while because I don't know that I'll ever fully understand LinkedIn, but I'm trying to be more present there. And I, am sharing some more Disney stories sometimes here and there. We were able to talk to James Warda and Theron Skis, and those connections have kind of led me to a few other connections, including today's guest, who is Rich Criado. I think I said it right. Okay, good. Frank often talks about butchering names, but I see it now. As I go to say it, I questioned myself, even though I've been saying it right this whole time.
It's a Long Island thing. The Long Island accents scare us.
Yes. And he spent almost 18 years in Disney and is kind of a big part of the MagicBand. So I'm really excited to talk to him today and find out more about his background and all, because I'm sure we just don't even understand the half of what went into all of that.
It's technology based. We're like, nope,
we're out. Yeah, forget it.
It's about how things evolve in the future and things like that. It's like, what's happening? We want the laminated pass, but we're open to these things.
Yes.
And so let's bring them right in right now. Today's guest on Theme Park Thursday, it's Rich Criado. Rich, hello.
How's it going? Thanks, Frank and Jen.
Hi. Thanks for connecting on LinkedIn because here we are. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, I heard what you said about LinkedIn. Yeah, it's a little bit of a jungle out there. It's a little, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's like a mix between influencers in a way, but also entertainment and education and networking. And it started as a networking site, but now it's more, and it's kind of like Facebook for professionals, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting how it's evolved. So
Yeah. It's been cool to see.
It's very funny just because it's these avenues, these channels really to, we love behind the scenes. We love documentaries, things like that. Oh, how did they do that? How did they put this together? And as we see professionals and say, these are the things I've done, and these are the things I used to do, and here's a story about how this developed. We love all of that.
Yeah.
That I feel like more so lately, or how the algorithm changed, I don't know. It just we're seeing a lot more of that on LinkedIn, and that's exciting for us because it's what we love.
Yeah.
Well, let's just start at the very beginning, because I'm interested in knowing from maybe your childhood, how you took this path to working at Disney for the period of time that you did, but also your involvement in technology and like, were you into video games when you were a kid? Like, how did that start? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I am a big gamer. Video game, by the way. I have two very large video game tattoo sleeves. So
Nice.
so yeah, I got those done a while back. But I was big gamer my whole life. But growing up, I was just very lucky, to have visited Disney. My parents took me there. Probably 4 or 5 times, my brother and I over the years, and it just, I think like a lot of people, they visited Disney, and I just became very fascinated by how it was all done. Like how did they do this? How can they do this? All those things, right? As you get older, you start to think about those things. And so I said to myself, it'd be awesome to like work there one day, And so, went to college at Penn State University, and I was a speech comm major, nothing specialized other than that, And I, just drove literally after I graduated, drove down to Orlando and walked into the casting center and just got a job. My first job was serving turkey legs in Liberty Square.
Oh,
amazing.
So those big, giant, juicy,
yeah, sure.
Not good for you, but they taste really good somehow. Turkey legs,
Right.
So for about 2.5 years, I worked, like hourly jobs, just kind of hopping around, because you could transfer your role at that time. Every 6 months, you could be eligible to like move around. So I wanted to experience a lot of different things. So I did. I drove the monorails. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
That was cool. I worked at the old, not there anymore, but the old Disney Institute, the spa and the fitness center, which was cool. So I got to like work out for free there. And
nice.
That was fun. I worked in Tomorrowland attractions in the Speedway. And then I got my first salary job, but that's how I started at Disney anyway. And when I was younger, the one thing that I always thought would be cool would be like to run the Magic Kingdom. That was like my things. Like, oh, what if I could be like, I don't know, the king of the Magic Kingdom. I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was cool. Like, I just thought, just the show aspect of it all and the operational piece of it. I thought it was so cool. So yeah, I just sought out Disney immediately after graduating college, and that's how I ended up there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a weird quirk of mine is how much I love the smell of the fumes of the Tomorrowland Speedway. Now, having worked there, does that just make you dizzy after a while? Do you appreciate it? How do you feel about the fumes?
I never thought about that, but I must have ingested many fumes now that I think about it. I don't know what that did to my head, but it is one of those things where there's like same thing with the turkey legs. I mean, like oddly enough, right? Like, when you smell that, it kind of takes you back. Or like, obviously everybody knows about Main Street with how they, with the cookie smell, all the tricks of the trade that they do. But there's also those natural things in the environment that remind you, even as bad as it is, the smell of the Magic Kingdom tunnel, just even that, because that's where I worked first, just walking into that, you take the bus, you park underneath, because the tunnel is like the bottom, the first floor, Magic Kingdom is the second floor. So you just kind of walk in, and like that has its own whatever all that is.
Yeah.
That has a smell to it.
Don't ask questions.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it all takes you back. But I know like they do the backstage tours, and people will always comment on it, like, what does that smell? It's like, well, it's it's a city above you that's operating basically. So that's what it is,
Yeah. I worked from 2004 to 2006-ish. I worked in Epcot in the IBM exhibit. And so I kind of avoided the tunnels if I could, because I was like, oh, the smell here. I don't know if I could do it too much. Yeah.
I don't blame you.
Interesting.
Rich, you've already taken us down. Well, you've mentioned like 4 things that could take us onto these tangents and these rabbit holes that will take us far, far away from what we're actually here to talk about today, which is the MagicBand. And but I want to ask, what kind of characters do you have on your sleeves of your like? Just give me ideas of the video game characters.
So I got like the Fallout Vault Boy. I have Super Mario. I have the Assassin's Creed logo. I have Metroid. I have Gears of War, Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, Alucard from Castlevania. I have symbols and different things. Mass Effect is another big game that I have on there. So all different eras, starting from the Nintendo era all the way through to my latest tattoo that I got was, I finished that sleeve in like 2012. So whatever was up till that point, I have. But I'll probably get another one soon. But that's my collection so far. But I probably have like 50 different. If you combine both sleeves, probably 50 different games represented.
That's really cool.
What
you might be asking this. What was your first video game system?
The Atari 2600. I think I was like 5 or 6 when I got it. Luckily my parents were able to get that for me, and I just thought it was so cool. You could play games at home, and because we grew up in arcades and all that stuff, and I just I don't know, I still play games today. I build my own gaming PCs, and I play like obviously the games today are much more advanced and all that, but I've always remained a gamer because I think like it's always helped the insights. I think there's the entertainment side of it, just like Disney. Like there's the things you see, and then the things that make it all work. And I think what's interesting about video games is just the design of them and how they keep you engaged, and the things that they do to the way they design them, essentially to keep you coming back, right? And in my most recent roles, I've been working in the gambling industry, and there's a lot of those game mechanics that are used in video games that actually gambling uses as well. So, and I would never say Disney is a gambling company, but those same engagement methods are used to keep you coming back for more. What I mean? So it's some of it is just engagement design, and marketing, and all the combination of those things, keep you a big fan of the brand and the product.
Before we make that official turn, the MagicBand conversation, can you dispel the rumors that the Magic Kingdom turkey legs, as someone who worked at a Renaissance festival for many years, people for years said that the Magic Kingdom turkey legs are actually emus. Are you here to dispel the rumor for us here on Theme Park Thursday?
I heard that before. I mean, part of my role was cooking them. Now, I didn't they come in a box, so like I don't, and it had ingredients on it.
Yeah.
It did say turkey on it. I mean, who knows? I don't know where it came from till it came to me. We used to cook them in the kitchen above, I can't remember the name of the restaurant now, but it's in Liberty Square right next to the Hall of Presidents. And there's like a restaurant in there with really good soup. Maybe you remember what it's called. But above the kitchen.
Or Columbia Harbor House, one or the other.
Columbia Harbor House.
Yeah, exactly. Columbia Harbor House. Yeah. So we would cook them up there, take the elevator down, and wheel them out into the cart. There's that sort of marketplace cart area there in Liberty Square, and that's where we get them. So I just looked at the ingredients and it said turkey, but who knows?
Yeah. And he may have signed an NDA. Let's just skip over that. We don't know.
Yeah, they're gonna come after me for revealing that one. But
that's fantastic. So you have these what we consider to be awesome cast member jobs in the early stages here, and this is a pathway to being a product development manager for MagicBand. Where at what point did you make that pivot or seize an opportunity? How did that all come to be?
Yeah, so after I did my stint as an hourly cast member, I got a role in procurement of all things, because I had my own computer business on the side. Actually, I was building and selling gaming computers essentially on eBay. It was like early 2000s, and I saw this job in the internal job postings. I saw this job, and it was technology procurement. So I was like, oh, well, wait a second. Like, I buy technology and I keep up on technology, so I could probably do that job. Yeah. So I found out who the hiring manager was, and I called him. I was on a break while I was in the Tomorrowland Speedway. I remember, and I called the guy on one of my 15-minute breaks on an internal, and I got him, and he picked up the phone. So I was like, hey, my name is Rich. I just recently graduated college. I'm working at Disney. And I saw this job, and blah blah blah. And I don't think he was necessarily paying attention, not in a malicious way. I just think he was busy. And he's like, "Where'd you go to college?" And I said, "Penn State." And I heard him like pick up the phone, and he goes, so "I went to Penn State too." Oh, nice. So I was like, "Oh, that's great." So we start. That was a common thing. And he's like, "Hey, another guy on the team also went to Penn State." He said, "Why don't you come in and interview for the job?" I'm like, "That would be amazing." We went, So like the following week, I went in and did like a panel interview and just talked about, and I didn't know anything about the mechanics of procurement, but So fortunately, I got the job. And my office was in the Team Disney building right across from downtown Disney. And so that role essentially, and I got promoted several levels through that, but because I was kind of a tech geek and it was in technology procurement, they put me on all these like high tech projects. So very ironically, so like my job was to like source technology. So like work with people in IT or other parts of the business that were looking for technology solutions. I would like send out bids to vendors and negotiate contracts and put them in place and then make sure that the contract was fulfilled, all of those things. So it's a very interesting job, but I got to meet a lot of people. So the one thing procurement allows you to do is talk to many different stakeholders, meet a lot of different people, find like really interesting projects. So ironically, essentially the precursor to the MagicBand, although we didn't maybe know it at the time, was I did a project for the laundry, the Walt Disney World laundry, which is like, I don't know if it's the world's largest laundry, but it's gigantic. There's like a building somewhere behind downtown Disney. And it's like a giant industrial laundry, all the towels and all the cast member costumes and everything. And so when you are a cast member and you might remember in the old days, you used to have to scan the barcode on, to like scan in and scan out your costume. And so that like, it was annoying. I just, as a user, like at the end of the day, I'm like, I just want to leave and I got to wait in this giant line. And that's like a grocery store, one by one. You got to scan. So what they wanted to do was embed an RFID chip and basically sew it into the clothing. So then you could just literally throw it into the laundry and it would be scanned, by the wirelessly essentially. And you could just go off and leave immediately. And then it would provide better tracking. And, as with this industrial laundry, it's like all you can see is clothes and moving and going everywhere all around. It's like a cleaner on steroids, cleaners on steroids, clothes everywhere. So it was a lot of operational efficiency. So I was the procurement guy on that project. So I got to like learn all about RFID technology and how it works and how do we essentially make this RFID tag survive a like 400 Fahrenheit industrial laundry system, And so that's important because later on the MagicBand is embedded within a plastic thing that has to be protected by a massive amount of heat during the injection process, right? So it was very interesting. So like that was one cool project. I was also the procurement guy for the ticketing system. So the old ticketing system, from the 90s that they put in and that ran the turnstiles and tracked all the tickets and did all that. So I was in charge of the procurement for that, negotiating the contracts, the software license agreement, the hardware. So I got to learn everything about how that works. Yeah. So, there's more there, but essentially the combination of those two things sort of allowed me to get a lot of knowledge about how all of that stuff works. And also introduced me to the people who would later become the leaders of what used to be called NGE. And that's how I got in at the very beginning, because I essentially knew the two guys who were put in charge of the MagicBand and My Magic Plus. It wasn't called that at the time. It was called NGE. But, so that's how I got in that role. So my boss's boss, who's John Padgett, he was like one of the original Fab Five who started NGE. And so I met him in like 2007 or maybe 2008. And a gentleman who worked for him brought me in because I told him I wanted to get into product development one day. And he's like, hey, I got an opportunity for you. This is a big secret project. I can't tell you what it is, but you said you wanted to get into product development. And I know you know ticketing, because he was the head of ticketing. And I know you know tech. So this is a perfect combination of the two. Would you like to be involved in it? And I was like, absolutely. I'd love to do that. So so I left procurement and joined, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was building. I had to sign a bunch of even more NDAs on top of what I already signed, And then I think at that time they knew it was going to be a wristband, but my job was ultimately to figure out how to actually, what's in it and how does it actually work and how do we actually make it? Like, it's one thing to make something in the garage and make 10 of them, but like how do you make millions of something? That's a totally different problem to solve, So I think all they knew at that point is it was going to be a band, but that was about it. So that's when I joined.
That's so cool. And I love, like, I think I actually just talked about this a little bit on LinkedIn yesterday, but like that there was this time where, you could be applying to jobs or meeting people and connecting in this way that I feel like is a little bit lost right now because of how like resumes are scanned and the systems and all of that. But like where you can make a connection with someone you had, you were already in the parks, but then you find this connection with Penn State, and then it leads you down this path where you're able to gain so many different types of skills, and where that takes you. It's so cool that you kind of were put on that journey without necessarily like having every box checked for the job role initially, right? So, but that's so cool that that's where it led you.
I just opened up like a whole well of, oh my God, I used to scan in my clothes at the end of my shift, which, by the way, when I left Disney, I was at #AlwaysMGM, but Hollywood Studios for 3.5, 4 years. But I was going seasonal, and I had like a bag of clothes still and like Velcro bottom shoes, and I didn't scan my stuff back in, and it was left in our grandmother's house in Ocala, Florida for a while, and they never came looking for me. So hopefully that
so there's some missing now.
But the what's funny about as I'm like reading articles this morning and before we spoke, again, the rabbit holes I fell down, because I was like, all right, MagicBand summary. Oh, what's an RIFD chip? And I gotta press RIFD. Like, I don't know what that is. Can you just maybe talk about how, like, that idea of this is, you knew that was the chip, like that could collect the data, that could do, be that kind of technology. I guess that's what I'm trying to grasp, is how, this can be the thing that works for laundry, but also then can be expanded in this way for ticketing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, now remember, this is kind of before the era of wearables. I mean, I think the only consumer wearable that was very popular was the Nike Fuel Band at the time. But, what we knew, especially from Europe, was that the NFC technology, the tapping, to pay for things, was already widely used in Europe and other places. The US has always been quite behind on that. So we were, and some of the research folks who had been looking into this even prior to NGE becoming a thing, sort of knew that like NFC technology could be used for this purpose, for payments and for access and things like that. So, we kind of knew that was going to be the piece. For the the aspects that you needed to tap for, or touch, as we called it. We didn't call it tap; we called it touch. But the other part of the MagicBand was what we call the long range read, which was more for the kind of twofold. One was for the experiential aspects of the project, where linking your PhotoPass to things you were doing, making things happen in the environment, happy birthday showing up on the wall, the things that sort of magically would occur. That technology was what was initially contemplated to be used for what we used on the laundry, because what we used on the laundry was not NFC. It was a long range, quote unquote, long range read, like 5-6 feet thing. What we came to find out, however, that actually wasn't the right solution for the MagicBand, because we tested it and it kind of failed spectacularly. Nobody knows this, but we all were testing the MagicBand in the park in 2010 and 2011, before it ever came out, under the noses of guests and things like that. We'd be in line, like wearing the MagicBand, like underneath clothing, stuff like that. We'd be standing there, like looking all suspicious. But yeah, it didn't work well. It required too many antennas, and it just wasn't accurate enough for what we wanted to do. And so that was an interesting time, because we're like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? So that was fun, but we came up with a different solution that used a 2.4 gigahertz radio. And I'm not giving away anything. This is all like on the FCC website. It's all information. My name is on the original FCC, which was as the product manager. So like, if you dig into the government website and look back to the very first time the MagicBand, the touch points and the long range readers and all the hardware, that has all my name on it. Doesn't have everything. I'm just I was the submission person for it, and the product manager. But so we ended up using 2.4 gigahertz, which created, actually, it was good in the sense that we could read it from anywhere. Like we could identify the MagicBand 200 feet away now. Awesome. But the problem was, like, now it was too powerful. So we went from like this thing that was like impossible to locate you. Now we can locate everybody. And I was like, now we have the opposite problem that we have to solve. How do we like get it so I know that you're standing substantially right there, or you're in this room and not in that room, and all that. So that's where like a lot of the engineering came in. We had a guy on our team who was my essentially tag team partner on this thing, and he was a brilliant engineer, who just had many years of experience. And so he and I together, along with partnering with Imagineering and park operations folks, just kind of needed to test it and figure it out along with our technology partners. We had to figure out a way to meet the use cases of that we wanted to do without overwhelming our systems with like, oh my God, now I can see thousands of them at a time when I only want to see one. Which is a fun problem to solve.
And this I'll call it a little Goldilocks testing that you did. How long does that process take, where you have one and you're like, whoop, this one's not working and this one's not working? And how long is that process?
I mean, it depends on what you're testing. I mean, that's of any product development, right? I mean, like I've been in product development now for 15 more of years, and like I'm a big fan of like you got to test as early as you possibly can, you know what I mean, and get learnings as soon as you possibly can. So that's what we try to do there. Obviously, when you're working on hardware, you have to have the hardware that works, and you have to install it, and there's permits, and there's all the stuff that you have to do in Disney. You can't just like walk in and hook something up and do something. It's a little bit more involved. But I think once we tested it in labs and things like that, but the best way to do it is we use the Haunted Mansion as our testing ground, because it was a slow moving attraction and a good use case to figure out. But I think we knew pretty quickly then that it was going to be challenging, and like, I think like we had some folks on the team who were showing us in their own way that like it wasn't going to work by like sitting on their hands and doing other things that sort of like proved that it wasn't going to work. Like, I don't know how many guests sit on their hands when they're riding Haunted Mansion, but like it's certainly possible. And like, you have a radio signal and you put your hand on it, like it'll block the radio signal, right? So like, it's valid in that way. So that's why we needed to go to another solution. But no, we could validate it pretty quickly, from that perspective, and then just try to test as often as we can, once we have the hardware and install it in a couple of attractions and give it a shot and go from there, So very, very fun. The other part of the fun part of the MagicBand, at least the initial version of it, was we had this issue of like, we didn't want to have 3 different sizes of the MagicBand, and so one of the other things we innovated was creating the ability to peel it so it became smaller in all dimensions, width and height, for a child or someone with a smaller wrist. And one of our designers, the primary designer on the MagicBand, who was with one of our vendors, I think he was inspired because my job was to like lay out the challenge as the product manager. I was like, this is the experience we want. I always think of that old Steve Jobs quote where he says, start with the technology, you start with the experience that you want, and then work backward to the technology. Right. So that's what we did. It's like, okay, well, I'm explaining to the team, like, this is what we want to accomplish. This is the business problem we're solving. You're the expert, and what do you think? How could we do this? And I guess our designer had an epiphany one weekend when he was like getting something out of the cabinet or something, and like those stacking containers, one's larger, the next one's smaller, the next one's smaller, and he's like, oh, what if the MagicBand could be like that? What if it could be bigger and then smaller on the inside? So he came up, he like just put it on a whiteboard, put it on a piece of paper, and he's like, what about this? I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So we took it to the manufacturer and said, hey, and they're like, we've never done anything like this, it's not possible. So, and I'm like, for me, like, I don't like when people say something's not possible.
Right. Yeah.
Anything's possible. You just have to figure it out, Yeah. And so one of our other manufacturers was like, wait a second, we did like a dog collar product a couple of years ago that peeled like that. And maybe we could apply that technology to this.
Yeah.
So it took us a while to like dial it in and get it to work properly and work seamlessly, and the right amount of pressure that breaks it, but not too much, but not too little. And that took like 6 months to get right. And so, but it solved the supply chain problem of not having to stock 5 or 6 different sizes of this thing, just have one, So that was an interesting challenge as well that we worked through.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It's really cool. You shared an article with us this morning. It's mid-February when we're recording, and the article is "The Messy Business of Reinventing Happiness." And I just love, like, in the middle of the article where Bob Iger is like, "This better work. This better work." and it's true. As someone like who has the comfort for the paper tickets and all the things that came before it, where is the balance of, okay, the technology, we're ready. The comfort of the guest, we can ensure this. How do you balance those two things to present and now it can happen, and now it's official? Like where do those roads meet?
We did a lot of guest research, obviously partnering with the research. We did something called in our design partner instituted this and worked with us on it. We used to call them participatory design sessions of PDS. And basically, like, you might have seen this in the parks. Like, you'll see sometimes research people, with clipboards or iPads, asking you questions. Sometimes they'll pull you aside and say, hey, would you be, and this is what we did. We would find a family or, some folks that look like they might be amenable to this, when the research folks would do this. And they'd say like, hey, would you like to come in and spend 2 hours with us? We'll give you fast passes. We'll give you a gift card. We'll give you, all the stuff and some food. And you just have to basically give us some feedback, And so I'll never forget, we did several of these, but like one day was kind of like the aha moment that every product person loves, when like your idea is validated essentially. Right. So like, this guy, we went through we explained to him the whole thing, the premise behind it, like we did like a little 10-minute intro. This is what we're doing, at the sign NDA, so they don't go tell them inventing all this stuff. Right. But, it's like appealing for a guest to like, I contributed to the creation of this thing. So this one guy, like, we go through the whole pitch, And he like stands up and goes into his pocket and he's like, so wait a second, you're telling me that I don't have to carry this giant stack of cards anymore? And he like throws it all on the table. And he had like photo passes, hotel room keys, dining passes, fast passes. I mean, he had a stack multiplied by how many people were in his family. So he must have had 20 cards.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I'm like, he's like, I only need to have this thing now. The MagicBand. And we're like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. He's like, that's amazing. So like we were able, I think, to validate that people would be willing to do this and that they would, no, not everybody. I mean, we still had the ticket backup just in case, right? But like the majority, we were confident that people would adopt it because of the ease, not only wearing it and it would be comfortable, but the ease of interaction through the park, through the touch points and the, my team, I was responsible for the touch point as well and the hardware and the readers, getting rid of the turnstiles and putting in this V-shaped entry method and having people sort of flow in like a river instead of like this stop start thing, And one more thing, which is really fascinating, that the day that we put the touch points live at the Magic Kingdom, we had like half the entry was touch points and half the entry was turnstiles still. And we were all just like standing in the back watching guests enter. Yeah. And the touch point side of the equation was just flowing right in. And like the old turnstile thing was like a giant line. And we're all like, holy shit, it works. You know what I mean? Like, you don't really know until, I mean, you know, you do as much as you can to prepare, but you don't really know until people are using it and you learn more. But like, that was a tremendous validation of like, this is actually going to work. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah.
That's so cool. Something I think about as you're talking through this is the fact that, the MagicBand knows if you're on a ride, if you're over here, if you're over there. And something that we have found interesting for our entire lives, and our parents used to talk about it too, is, as these families are in the park and kids are walking around and, you always tell the kids to find someone with a name tag. But there are plenty of undercover security walking around and helping out here and there. Was this something that could potentially assist with or has assisted with lost children or people getting separated from each other? Is that something that this has helped with over time?
I think that was a potential use case. I think it wasn't our initial thinking on it. We did, and I think it's still live today, we did leverage that on the Disney Cruise Line. So we did replace the solution that was on the cruise line with the MagicBand for the child areas. Like if you checked your child into the youth activity space, we made a youth activities MagicBand, and we used our readers, integrated it with the software that was there. And you were able to know if a child left the room, essentially, just like the old bands, but these were much more comfortable and performant. Once I left the park, because I was still at Disney after MagicBand for essentially 3 more years. I worked on Disney Infinity, the video game. But when we handed off the MagicBand to the park operations fully and transitioned it, like, I'm not sure if they took that forward, but the MagicBand is not a GPS either, right? It's not a you can generally know where people are, but it is not, even a GPS is still has an error rate of 30 to 50 feet, but like the MagicBand was not able to get you to, in some instances we could, but we needed like supplemental help to do that. Like if I wanted to locate you on an attraction, we had to do a little bit more to do that. We couldn't just rely on the pinging of the MagicBand into the atmosphere. So it was a little different because if you think about the MagicBand, the band is the broadcasting, whereas a GPS, like the broadcast is coming from up there and coming down to what you have. This is the opposite of everybody else is sort of blurting out their location and
Right.
essentially into the environment. So, I think like generally it could be used for that, but I don't think the child tracking was like the primary
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
It was more like, hey, I want to walk into the Brown Derby restaurant and like see my picture up on the wall next to
Yeah.
Harrison Ford. Like, okay, like this is a big giant room. We know if you're in here or not.
Mhm.
We might be reading magic bands outside, but there's enough of a signal and intelligence to kind of know
Yeah.
that okay, you're probably in this room. So I'm going to go ahead and put your picture up on the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, and we have experience with the Disney Cruise Line and having our kids on there with their magic bands and
Mhm.
going to pick them up and they'll be like, "Oh, they're in the Toy Story room." Like, "Okay."
Right.
That's
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The what I love about this conversation is, sometimes we go into a world where all these things are not the same. These things are worse than they were before. But just mentioning like here's the Magic Band line, and here's
Mhm.
the Turnstile line. Like
Yeah.
now people are so angry if it doesn't scan, and we got to take your picture. I'm like,
Yeah.
but the turnstile line was so long. We're going all the way up to the monorail ramp. Come on.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you see what great improvements have been made over time.
Yeah.
Then it moves into the phone technology. Like that's where where this is what you're compiling so much data. So the band to the phone to they used to just have an IBM computer and put in your dinner reservation. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
how the compilation, how do you compile all those things and know all those systems are working together?
Yeah.
No, it's a good question. I mean, I think that was the other half of the equation, that helps. And I think like it's always interesting because I think even with GPSs, and I think and it doesn't help with what you see in the world today with data breaches and
Mhm.
Facebook potentially using your data for whatever
Right.
purposes they're using it for. So like, I think consumers are right to be skeptical of these
Mhm.
products, but I think the goal of the Magic Band was never nefarious in that way. It was
Right.
to deliver better service.
Certainly.
And I think
Yeah.
like the other thing I used to say internally, even to people, is like, well, we're tracking people. I was like, well, I mean, I could track you today. I mean, like, I know when you exited your hotel room. I know when you paid for something. I know when
Mhm.
you entered the park because you had to scan your tickets. So, like, I could recreate your entire pathway
Right.
from the data that we have today from the old paper ticket. So,
Right.
but it's not that we needed to do that. We
Yeah.
didn't, but like, could have,
Right.
So like, saying that the Magic Band was going to like somehow make that easier was not true.
Yeah.
But I think when people see that, they just their mind just automatically goes to the worst possible conclusion, right?
Right.
But it's like cell phones track you.
Mhm.
In order to even receive a phone call, you have to be triangulated. So like
Right.
the
Right.
tower has to locate your device in order to deliver the phone call. So like
Mhm.
you are being tracked
Yeah.
if you use a phone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But again, not for a nefarious purpose, for the
Right.
purpose of delivering service to you.
Right.
Right.
100%.
So I think that's what the Magic Band did, was just allow Disney to provide you better service,
Mhm.
and to also make the park operations run more smoothly. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe increase hourly ride capacity, perhaps do, deliver more accurate wait times. So guests had an accurate number. Remember the old days, it would say 40 minutes and you're like, is it really 40 minutes?
Right.
Or is that just, did they just type that
Yeah.
in there because they don't want many people in there? I
Right.
don't know. Like, is that real? With the Magic Band, it's 100% accurate up to
Yeah.
the moment because
Right.
you know exactly, right? They used to hand you, like, you might remember in the attraction, they might hand you a card and say, hey, can you
Yep.
wear this, and scan it on the way
Mhm.
out, and like
Yeah.
that's kind of accurate, but
Yeah.
No,
but
when
again,
you
like, why
yeah.
would the company put the burden on the guest to,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing about service is like,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be asking the guests to do our job for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So no, I think like but how you validate that, I mean, like, and know that it's working. I mean, the interesting thing about the Magic Band again is like you have 50,000 people in the Magic Kingdom, all pinging out an ID constantly every second,
Mhm.
or sometimes more, and all this information is out there, and you have to be able to assimilate that data and then kind of skinny it down to something that isn't going to overwhelm the system,
Mhm.
and then ultimately pass on the information that is required, be it a ticketing system or a payment system or
Yeah.
an Imagineering system that delivers an experience to you. Like they don't need to see all of this information that's out there, all this garbage that's just floating out there. So we built also a solution that sort of compressed and minimized all that into a simple message that can then be passed on. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, entering a room with 1,000 people and they're all talking, but I only want to hear from one person, you know, so like I'm only going to come in and like listen to one person give me one little bit of information and then just leave. Like I don't need to hear all the other stuff that's going on. That's essentially what we built. We called it the XBRC, the X-Band Reader Controller, but it was essentially a piece of software which took all the noise and reduced it down to something that was very simple and easy to understand. And then we would pass it on to the existing, because we didn't change the ticketing system. We didn't change reservation systems. We weren't touching any of that stuff. We were just creating a new experience. So we didn't want to like overwhelm all the existing stuff that was there. So that's how, you know, how we validated that was again through massive testing and things like that, you know, to make sure that it was actually working the way we intended it to.
When one of your 4 keys of a company is efficiency, like that, like how are you, if you're making a process more efficient and you know, you're already gathering all the data in different ways. So it's just a continuation, which I guess leads me to this is now working with other companies, with technology such as this, what is the path forward now, in terms of things you've been working on, things you've noticed, trends you've been seeing, where do you know, whether it's just working on apps, what comes next?
I think like using the phone is interesting because there was people even in 2012, you know, when MagicBand didn't go live till January of 13, I think on a limited basis, and then rolled out throughout 13. But even back in 2011, 2012, we had executives asking us like, oh, can't this just be an app? You know, and like, and I think like that, like, sure, anything can be an app, as we know, but I think like it wasn't about that. It was about the experiential aspect and having something that you could hold on to. Right. And I think like, and like even sending the MagicBand home in anticipation of your vacation, like that was frankly, a big battle internally just to get that approved, you know, because obviously finance people like, oh, that's going to be expensive and complicated. And how do you do that? And how do we get it from our manufacturer in China all the way through the supply chain to, you know, somewhere in Florida or Tennessee and then fulfill it from there. And, you know, it's a very complicated operation that we pulled off, but it took a lot of work. But I think like even this year, one of my former coworkers, not at Disney, at another company, sent me a picture and he's like, I'm going to Disney World and I just got my MagicBands in the mail. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that moment right there, even all these years later, that is why we did it. Just so you can see the look on your kid's face when they open it and be like, oh my God, it's
of course,
the anticipation, and no other company can do that. So I think like another thing I was saying on another podcast actually, and for the gambling industry was like, and maybe this is why I was replying to your LinkedIn post, was casinos could learn so much from Disney, you know, and they're very similar. They're experiential. They're like theme parks for adults. If you think about a casino, right? It's not for kids, but for adults, it's kind of like a theme park, you know. And it's like, why don't they study what Disney does very well? Experiential and, you know, building that core memory. And that's what gets you to come back, right? That magical experience that no one else can deliver to you, you know? And I think companies, it doesn't mean you have to have a piece of hardware on your wrist. I'm not saying that that's required, but something that creates that emotional connection. And I don't think like solely an app will do that for a casino.
Right.
And, you know, I think the push to make everything be on an app is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's to me, it's a little disconnected from the physical nature of having something that a physical memento, you know, that, you know, you can have and say, you know, when I have this band, this is an old version of the MagicBand, but like you have this, you know, it's, I'll always have this, and it'll always remind me. This is actually a non-public 20 millionth MagicBand that I took off the assembly line. But you know, like that's what I'm saying. Like I how we go forward, I think it's the constant battle between experience and then delivering financial results.
Being the gamer that you are, it had to be pretty cool to be transitioning into Disney Infinity, and now you're in the online casino gaming world. Can you talk to us about how you left the Magic Bands and went in that direction?
Yeah, well, we were actually, so in the early 2000s, Activision had this game called Skylanders, you might remember, and they're essentially figurines with RFID tags in them. So we were working with the developers to actually make the Magic Band work in the game. So like theoretically you could, and this never went live. It would have been amazing, I think. But like, part of Disney Infinity was having these virtual worlds that you could create and like play with your toys in, essentially. And so what we wanted to be able to do was recreate your vacation inside of Disney Infinity by just tapping your Magic Band on the game reader. That was the idea. And so I got to meet the developers and got to know them really well. So, like the NGE project and our team, we always had a natural end date where we would transit, just like Imagineering does. We weren't Imagineering, we partnered with them, but like same thing is like you concept it, you build it, you get it live, you gracefully transition it, and then at some point it becomes the operators operate it on a daily basis, and we go off and do something else, and so that's when I had talked to the developers. I was like, hey, this point is coming up, and they were looking for someone to basically work with their development team to like take the digital designs and make them physical, and how do we do all of that. And I had a lot of obviously manufacturing experience. I worked with them on the Magic Band pilot project. And so that's how I transitioned over to that project. So I actually moved out to California and Burbank and worked out of those offices.
Oh, that's so cool.
Worked on it all the way till the end. And the former leader of the NGE project actually went to Carnival Corporation, the cruise line company, and recruited a bunch of us over there. And, we did a different device there called the Ocean Medallion. It's still live today on Princess Cruises. Does a lot of really awesome stuff. But I got to work on the gaming aspects of that project. And through that, I met a bunch of casino people. And just one thing led to another. After many years of that project, I met some people in the gambling world, and they were looking for strong product people. And one thing led to another, and I went over there. So I've been in the gambling business now for almost 7 years, and it's been a fun ride. But I'm still after that pursuit of like, how do we push the casino industry forward into not having the same looking casino as it was 50 years ago? You know what I mean? The same games, the same everything. And things have evolved, and there's been innovation, but I've always pushed for like, what if Disney made a casino? What would it look like? And it probably would look different. And I think the counter argument to that is, well, nobody wants that. No casino gamer wants that. It's like, well, true, but they've never been given anything else. So like, it's like, like, how do you know until you try it?
It's such a right, and you almost see where the streets can merge, because you sometimes hear, Disney and ESPN, they're talking about like, will they go into the sport? The sports betting comes up a lot. You see the increase of advertisements for sports betting websites. So the casino seems like the natural evolution of this. I mean, we're in New York City for years, like there will never be casinos anywhere near here. And now that is all they're
everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, where else can we put a casino?
Yeah.
So you see where this path is going. So I think that's what I love about this here, and how you're speaking about constantly innovating, because that's that you see them kind of. It's like you got to take one highway or the other, and they're running the same path, but at some point they intersect, so you can get back on the other highway. Just at what point is that going to happen? It's really super fascinating. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm so glad that Jen initially connected, and now we have connected. I know other people can connect to you as well and check out your website. I don't know what you want to plug, what you want to talk about. I'll give you that space to do so.
No, I mean, I'm nothing necessarily to plug. I mean, I'm just, I'm looking for my next opportunity, out there, and I'm just talking to as many people as I can. And, like I said, I've been talking to folks in the gaming industry about, maybe what they can learn from from Disney, and maybe that's where I fit next, in terms of that. But look, the travel and entertainment business is so interesting to me as well, and there's still so much room for product and experience innovation. So I'm always looking to do that. But I'm you can plug my website, but I'm doing a little consulting on the side and things like that, and filling the time until see where I land next.
RichCriado.com is the website for you to check out. If you don't do the LinkedIn, that's his website to see all the projects that Rich has worked on over the years, and if you want to connect that way. But Rich, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us here today.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
The Dillo's Diz podcast is hosted by Frank Cardillo and Jen Cardillo-Snyder. Music produced by Matt Harvey. Logos and video production courtesy of Snidillo Studios. Dillo's Diz Resort is our Patreon with tiers starting as low as $1 per month. You can visit dillosdizresort.com to learn more. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, X Twitter, and Facebook at Dillo's Diz. Check us out on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/DillosDiz. Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there. We also have merch available on TeePublic and Etsy. For all this and more, visit our one-stop shop, dillosdiz.com. Dillo's Diz Podcast 2025.